Jesus was bleeding and dying on the cross, he prayed for those who were taunting him. He prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus told the parable of the unmerciful servant. Peter came up to him and said, "Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times? He was patting himself on the back, pretty proud of himself. Boy, forgiving someone 7 times, that's pretty impressive, isn't it? And Jesus looked at Peter and said, "No, Peter, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. And then Jesus told a parable about a king who wanted to settle his accounts. And one servant was brought in before him who owed him millions of dollars in debt. The king said, "Can you pay?" The man said, "No." The king said, "Throw that man into prison." But the man got down on his knees and begged the king, "Please give me time and I'll pay it all back." And we read that Jesus said the king had pity on him and canceled his debt. That's what forgiveness is, canceling a debt. The servant got up, walked out of the palace, saw a fellow servant walking down the street who owed him 3 months' wages. Not millions of dollars, 3 months' wages. The servant said to his fellow servant, "Pay up now, you owe it to me." The fellow servant said, "Please be patient with me and I'll pay it all back." The servant said, "No, I want it now, you owe me." The man said, "I can't pay you." And the servant had his fellow servant thrown into prison. Some other folks saw what happened. They went to the king and they said, "Oh king, remember that servant whose millions of dollars of debt you canceled? You forgave? Well, he just threw a man into prison for being unable to pay back a few months' debt." Outraged, the king called that servant in, said, "Let me get it straight. You just threw a man in prison for 3 months' debt when I just canceled millions of dollars debt of yours?" And the king threw that servant into prison. Then Jesus says some of the most scary verses in the Bible. He says, "This is how my Father will treat you unless you forgive your brother from your heart." What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is canceling a debt. Forgiveness is dismissing a debt. Forgiveness is giving up your right to hate someone for the dastardly thing they've done to you. Forgiveness is not letting someone off the hook, but forgiveness is transferring a person from hanging on your hook to hanging on God's hook. In other words, forgiveness is not saying, "Nothing wrong happened, let's forget everything and act like everything's just fine." That's not forgiveness, that's amnesia. Forgiveness is saying, "That was wrong what you did, but I forgive you. I cancel your debt. I'm not going to hang you on my hook and judge you. Instead, I'm